Once you have your map showing your wells, as few or as many as you like, there are tools available to break down your zonal analysis. And I have on here an example of a particular formation showing my interpreted lithofasces. And what I want to do is make my geographical interpretation. So let's say this is my Triassic era, and I want to map out my shoreline and my lacustrine fasces, for example. I have the ability from the tools up at the top to draw a polygon. Click, and I can say, okay, my pale blues over here on the west side are my lacustrine fasces majority, so I can say here's the edge of my lacustrine fasces, and it can be as rough as you need it to be. Double click to finish will open up the properties. We type in a name here, and we can give it a colour to fill in if we'd like, and we hit OK. And you'll notice on the resources tab down the left hand side under polysets, we now have my Lake to Triassic polygon saved. What you'll also notice if we open up properties are the X and Y range is based on the geographic coordinate system that we have set up on the map and where I have clicked as an area. If we go to right click on the grouping of that polygon, we can add yet another polygon, and all this dark blue area in these wells are my marine, and this yellow section here is my onshore fasces. So I could say quite happily that I have some kind of shoreline along here, and again I can call that my offshore area. Change the colour of that to be a blue, and there we have it. So I now have my lake and my offshore area, and you'll notice that that new polygon has appeared under this original grouping, and I can go in here and I can rename this anything I like. So let's just call this the Triassic interpretation. And you'll notice this at the higher level, we're seeing the coordinate system actually being used on this. So everything is georeferenced that way. Alright, now I can step up and down through my formations and see the different interpretation of my fasces. So if I go to my layers tab and turn off my Triassic interpretation, let's say this is my Jurassic interpretation, and I can decide, instead of just dragging one on at a time, I can drag the entire grouping onto my map. It's added as a layer, and I can see all of my interpretation based on my limited well data. So from here, we also have a tool that will allow us to build a correlation. So we could go across our interpreted shoreline, choose several wells, and build. So we have the ability to step through each of these tabs and choose whether we want to look at the entire data range that we have for these wells, or to look at a specific data type, like the formation interpretation, and apply those depths. You'll see in the table these numbers have changed. But if we are only interested in our Jurassic, for example, and again the numbers change, we set the scale, the distance and the margins between, and then we get to choose our templates. There's a very wide range of templates that can be very simple to be more complex to look at particular data types. Then we can add in our ties, and it's always easier to start with intervals and then layer on top of those any kind of event that you want to display based on the data in these wells. So we'll start with formation. You can see that there's a shallower orange section here to the east than there was to the northwest when we started this. You can set these to flatten on a particular zone, for example, and apply it to all the well sticks. So we can now zoom in quite happily on our chosen interval. Now, you can see we have some lacustrine fascies over here, lacustrine and marine, and there's a lot of little channels and things happening. So what we can do is use our ties to go between these wells that can't tie specific units and generate things like pinch outs. So we have this yellow channel coming in here and pinching out in this direction because we can't see it in this well. We could do the same down in this section. We could also tie particular units together like this and actually modify this shape to show another interpretation. So for example, if I drag these little red vertices down here, they can be unconnected to the well, and we can zoom in to between these two wells, and we can add in new data points just via the right click menu and generate the kind of shapes that we want to generate. Once we've finished editing, we can go in here and it still shows us where it started from, but we can go in and change the appearance of this. So we could change this to be some channel fill and change the caption and apply to this particular unit. You can see we now have these shapes between the wells that we have maybe seen in our seismic interpretation or our other wells out with this correlation to know we have, let's say, a fluvial channel coming between these two wells. We can do the same in any of these interwell spaces using this tie to or pinch out functionality. And then we reshape the tie, drag it away from the well, and make whichever shape it is that we want to. And finish editing and change the name of this, change the appearance to be something that we've chosen before. Perhaps it's another channel, and apply it there. So these are freeform. You can go in and then change these at any time just via that right click reshape tie option. So once you've completed these charts, they can be saved with their own name and organised into folders for you to look at later on. And also, if we go back to look at this on a map, we should be able to see our green correlation line. So if I close this now, go back to our map and turn on our show correlations, you can see that green line that we've just made is now displayed on our map. So if we decide from here we want to, for example, export some data, we can actually use the geographic interpretation to filter our well list. So if we wanted to export some lithofasces data, for example, let's create a new query, and you can query any kind of data in the database for each well, but what we are interested in are the shapes. So you can filter based on the location of a well, based on its surface position, its TD, or a particular event that penetrates through a chosen polygon. And you'll see the list is filtered based on the polygons that are listed in the resource. You see that shoreline, when I expand this, is not present, and that's because we can only query on polygons. So anything within a particular area. So if we were interested in anything in these rivers, there's multiple ways this can be displayed. It obviously can be displayed on the map as well. And if we hit OK, so once you've created that query and we select it, you notice the wells listed, there's 3 ticked, And if we were to go back to the map and apply that same query, you'd also see the 3 wells highlighted in the purple diamond. Of course, in this case, we don't need to highlight those wells on the map because we can see them in our interpreted river shapes. And that's it for the spatial interpretation on a map and that detailed interpretation on the 2D correlation lines.